Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to read The Tale of Benjamin Bunny. Now, as you remember, Benjamin Bunny was based on a real rabbit that Beatrix Potter had that she named Benjamin Bunny. So let me show you the picture of him again because I think you might enjoy seeing that. She called him Benjamin Bouncer. There she is holding, see? Actually pretty big. All right. The Tale of Benjamin Bunny. One morning, a little rabbit sat on a bank. He pricked his ears and listened to the trit-trot of a pony. A gig was coming along the road. It was driven by Mr. McGregor, and beside him sat Mrs. McGregor in her best bonnet. As soon as they had passed, little Benjamin Bunny slid down into the road and set off with a hop, skip, and a jump to call upon his relations who lived in the wood at the back of Mr. McGregor's garden. Now, who do you think his relations could be? That's a word for relatives or his family, extended family. Who do we know that lives near Mr. McGregor's garden? That wood was full of rabbit holes. And in the neatest, sandiest hole of all lived Benjamin's aunt and his cousins, Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Old Mrs. Rabbit was a widow. That means her husband had died. She earned her living by knitting rabbit wool mittens and muffetees. I once bought a pair at the bazaar. She also sold herbs and rosemary tea and rabbit tobacco, which is what we call lavender. So here's a picture of his aunt and his cousins, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. So do those names sound familiar? I think they should. Okay, let's keep reading. Little Benjamin did not very much want to see his aunt. He came round the back of the fir tree and nearly tumbled upon the top of his cousin, Peter. Peter was sitting by himself. He looked poorly and was dressed in a red cotton pocket handkerchief. Came around the corner, and whose ears are pricking up there? I think that's Peter. Here's Peter. Peter, said little Benjamin in a whisper, who has got your clothes? Now, do you remember from the last story what happened to Peter's little jacket and shoes? Where did they end up? Peter replied, the Scarecrow in Mr. McGregor's garden, and described how he had been chased about the garden and had dropped his shoes and coat. Little Benjamin sat down beside his cousin and assured him that Mr. McGregor had gone out in a gig and Mrs. McGregor's also had left, and certainly for the day, because she was wearing her best bonnet. Peter said he hoped that it would rain. At this point, old Mrs. Rabbit's voice was heard inside the rabbit hole, calling, Cottontail, Cottontail, fetch some more chamomile. Peter said he thought he might feel better if he went for a walk. So look, there's Benjamin and Peter talking together. And there they are. They're about to go for their walk. They went away hand in hand and got upon the flat top of the wall at the bottom of the wood. From here they looked down into Mr. McGregor's garden. Peter's coat and shoes were plainly to be seen upon the Scarecrow, topped with an old tam-o'-shanter of Mr. McGregor's. That's an old type of hat. So you can see there they are looking. And look in the garden, there's Peter's clothes. Little Benjamin said, oh, it spoils people's clothes to squeeze under a gate. The proper way to get in is to climb down a pear tree. Peter fell down head first, but it was of no consequence, as the bed below was newly raked and quite soft. It had been sown with lettuces. There they are, jumping down the pear tree into the garden. They left a great many odd little footmarks all over the bed. Now, this isn't a bed as like a bed you sleep in. Have you heard the word flower bed or vegetable garden bed? So it just means the area that the farmer had planted all his vegetables. So that's the bed they're talking about. They left a great many odd little footmarks all over the bed, especially little Benjamin, who was wearing clogs. Little Benjamin said that the first thing to be done was to get back Peter's clothes in order that they might be able to use the pocket handkerchief. They took them off the scarecrow, and there had been rain during the night. There was water in the shoes, and the coat was somewhat shrunk. Benjamin tried on the tam o' shanter, but it was too big for him. There they are looking at their little footprints. And then you can see here Peter trying to get his clothes back on and Benjamin trying on the hat. Then he suggested that they should fill the pocket handkerchief with onions as a little present for his aunt. Peter did not seem to be enjoying himself. He kept hearing noises. Benjamin, on the contrary, was perfectly at home and ate a lettuce leaf. He said that he was in the habit of coming to the garden with his father to get lettuces for their Sunday dinner. The name of little Benjamin's papa was old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. The lettuces certainly were very fine. So there's the rabbits. They're getting some onions to take back to Peter's mom. There's Benjamin getting lettuces. Peter did not eat anything. He said he should like to go home. Presently, he dropped half the onions. Why do you think Peter wants to go home? I wonder if he's afraid since before he was almost caught by Mr. McGregor. Little Benjamin said that it was not possible to get back up the pear tree with a load of vegetables. He led the way boldly towards the other end of the garden. They went along a little walk on planks under a sunny red brick wall. Planks are just boards. The mice sat on their doorsteps, cracking cherry stones. They winked at Peter Rabbit and little Benjamin Bunny. So there they are. There they are on the little boards getting ready to go home. And there's the mice watching them. Presently, Peter let the pocket handkerchief go again. What did he have in the handkerchief? Do you remember? The onions? Oh, it looks like his onions are going to roll out. They got amongst flower pots and frames and tubs. Peter heard noises worse than ever. His eyes were as big as lollipops. He was a step or two in front of his cousin when he suddenly stopped. What do you think he saw? This is what those little rabbits saw around the corner. Little Benjamin took one look, and then in half a minute, less than no time, he hid himself and Peter and the onions underneath a large basket. What did they see? A kitty cat. The cat got up and stretched herself and came and sniffed at the basket. Perhaps she liked the smell of onions. Anyway, she sat down upon the top of the basket. Here she is smelling it. Look, she's sitting on top of it now. She sat there for 5 hours. I cannot draw you a picture of Peter and Benjamin underneath the basket because it was quite dark and because the smell of onions was fearful. It made Peter Rabbit and little Benjamin cry. The sun got round behind the wood, and it was quite late in the afternoon, but still the cat sat upon the basket. At length there was a pitter-patter, pitter-patter, and some bits of mortar fell from the wall above. The cat looked up and saw old Mr. Benjamin Bunny prancing along the top of the wall of the upper terrace. He was smoking a pipe of rabbit tobacco and had a little switch in his hand. He was looking for his son. Ooh. Old Mr. Bunny had no opinion whatever of cats. He took a tremendous jump off the top of the wall onto the top of the cat and cuffed it off the basket and kicked it into the greenhouse, scratching off a handful of fur. The cat was too much surprised to scratch back. Wow. So Benjamin Bunny's father came to the rescue. He was not afraid of that kitty. When old Mr. Bunny had driven the cat into the greenhouse, he locked the door. Then he came back to the basket and took out his son Benjamin by the ears and whipped him with the little switch. Then he took out his nephew Peter. Then he took out the handkerchief of onions and marched out of the garden. Oh, I think they're in trouble. You can see Peter got a spanking. Or not Peter, that's Benjamin, right? Then he took them out of the garden. When Mr. McGregor returned about half an hour later, he observed several things which perplexed him. Perplexed means you're kind of confused. It looked as though some person had been walking all over the garden in a pair of clogs. Only the footmarks were too ridiculously little. Who would have left little footprints? Also, he could not understand how the cat could have managed to shut herself up inside the greenhouse, locking the door upon the outside. There's Mr. McGregor trying to figure it all out. When Peter got home, his mother forgave him because she was so glad to see that he had found his shoes and coat. Cottontail and Peter folded up the pocket handkerchief, and old Mrs. Rabbit strung up the onions and hung them from the kitchen ceiling with the bunches of herbs and the rabbit tobacco. The end. There you can see they're hanging out in their little rabbit hole. What a funny story. So, how were Peter and Benjamin Bunny related? Think back in the story. See if you can figure it out. I'd love for you to draw a picture of them together. Maybe you could find your favorite part and draw a picture of that. So I hope you enjoyed the tale of Benjamin Bunny. Bye, guys.